There is a silence that only the disciplined ever hear, a stillness beneath the noise, where focus becomes a blade. Most people never reach it. They wander through their days like men walking through fog, distracted, anxious, pulled by every impulse of the mind. They believe focus is something you try harder to have. But the ancient ones knew the truth. Focus is not force. It is a remembering, a returning, a reclaiming of the warrior within. This is the story of a young man losing the battle against his own attention, and the old philosopher who teaches him the forgotten system of presence. A journey into fear, ego, silent into silence, and the path that turns weakness into mastery. Not through motivation, not through hacks, but through an inner transformation, so powerful it reshapes the very rhythm of the spirit. What you're about to hear is not advice. It is a mirror, a warning, a way, because focus is not something you learn. It is something you become. Chapter 1: The Fog of the Unfocused Mind. Part 1. Night has a way of revealing truths the daylight politely hides, and on this night, Ren walked beneath a sky bruised with clouds, his breath sharp, his thoughts louder than the wind moving through the trees. He wasn't running from anyone, yet somehow he felt chased, not by a person, but by 1,000 unfinished tasks, 100 forgotten promises, and the relentless gnawing of his own restless mind. All day, he had felt pulled apart, fragmented. Every sound startled him. Every message felt urgent. Every distraction stole a piece of him. This is the life many men live without noticing. A slow erosion of presence. The city behind him still glowed faintly, like a dying ember. But Ren didn't look back. He couldn't. Something inside him felt close to breaking. Something fragile. Something important. Something he'd ignored for too long. He walked into the mountains, the way wounded warriors limp toward rivers, looking for relief, even if they cannot name the pain. His footsteps crunched on gravel, his breathing staggered, his mind scattered. Thoughts collided like blades in a drunken duel. Why can't I focus? Why am I always overwhelmed? Why do I feel weak, even though I'm trying so hard? The questions swarmed him like insects. He had tried every modern fix: productivity apps, timers, planners, motivational speeches whispered into earbuds, but they all dissolved the moment discomfort arrived. His willpower felt thin, like a rope unraveling strand by strand. Ren didn't know it yet, but what he suffered from was not a lack of discipline, but the absence of an inner anchor. Humans were not built to live inside storms of noise. Yet, he had lived there so long, he thought chaos was normal. A cold wind curled around him as he reached an old stone path, ancient, cracked, and half-eaten by moss. He followed it, though he didn't know why. Maybe exhaustion guided him, maybe instinct. Or maybe the spirit always finds its teacher when the ego is finally too tired to resist. The forest swallowed the last of the city glow. Darkness, deep, quiet, heavy. Ren paused. His chest tightened. Without noise, he felt exposed, naked, vulnerable. Then he heard a voice. "You walk like a man, trying to escape himself. Ren spun, startled. An old figure stood beside the path, as if carved from the night itself. Robes worn, posture straight, eyes sharp enough to cut through fog. His presence felt ancient, immovable, like a mountain disguised as a man. I didn't hear you," Ren stammered. "That is because you do not hear anything," the old man replied. "Not the wind, not your breath, not your own spirit calling for order." Ren swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "Kain," the old man said simply. "Caretaker of this mountain. Caretaker, or something more." Kain stepped closer. His gaze was calm but unyielding. "You carry the scent of a scattered mind," he said. "Your attention jumps like a frightened deer. Your thoughts cling to you like thorns. You are drowning, though there is no water." Ren felt heat rise to his face. "I just can't focus. I've tried everything." Kayan shook his head slowly. "What you call lack of focus," he said, "is merely an undisciplined spirit." The words struck Ren deeper than he expected, not as an insult, but as truth, sharp, precise, unavoidable. Kayan turned toward a small stone hut barely visible in the dark. "If you seek silence, follow. If you seek comfort, return to the world that numbs you." Ren hesitated. Then, with the exhaustion of a man who has finally found a doorway, he stepped forward, and the fog of his unfocused mind followed him inside. Chapter 1, Part 2. The stone hut was small, almost monastic. Nothing but a wooden table, a clay lamp, and a floor worn smooth by years of footsteps. Ren stepped inside, cautiously, as if the silence might swallow him whole. Kayan entered behind him, closing the door with slow, deliberate intention. The air felt thicker here, heavier, like the world had stopped moving. "Sit," Kayan instructed. Ren obeyed, lowering himself onto a woven mat. His leg bounced anxiously, a nervous rhythm he didn't notice until Kayan's eyes narrowed in observation. "There," Kayan murmured. "The body mimics the mind." Ren forced his leg to still. It felt like holding down a wild animal. Kayan knelt opposite him. The lamp flickered between them, casting long shadows across the walls. Shadows that stretched and twisted like the clutter inside Ren's thoughts. "Tell me," Kayan began, "when did your mind become so loud?" Ren inhaled shakily. "I don't know. It's been like this for years. My phone, my job, messages, deadlines. My brain feels like it's constantly buzzing. I can't concentrate on anything anymore. I start tasks and abandon them. I try to breathe and feel guilty for stopping. I feel like I'm losing control." Kayan nodded, not with pity, but understanding. "You live as most men do, enslaved by noise, yet afraid of silence." Ren frowned. "Silence makes me uncomfortable." "Of course it does," Kayan said. "Silence reveals the truth, and you have avoided truth for a long time." Ren looked down. The old man's words were arrows, sharp, precise, aimed at the center of him. Kayan continued, "The modern world teaches you to chase stimulation, to consume endlessly, to keep your mind in constant motion. A distracted man is easy to control, but the ancient systems, Zen, Stoicism, Bushido, they understood the opposite. That focus is the root of all strength. He tapped a finger to Ren's chest. And you, young one, have never been taught to govern your inner kingdom. Ren swallowed hard, the words lodged in his throat like a stone. Is that why I feel weak? Ren asked quietly. Kayan nodded. Weakness is not the absence of effort. It is the absence of direction. You fight everything except the true enemy. What enemy? Kayan leaned back, his voice low and steady. The chaos within your own mind. Ren felt a strange mix of shame and relief. Someone was finally naming the shadow he'd been running from. Kayan lifted the clay lamp and set it between them. Look at the flame. Ren obeyed. Notice how it dances, flickers, reacts to the smallest breath. Kayan asked. That is your mind, disturbed by every movement around it. Then, Kayan cupped his hands around the flame, shielding it from the air. The flame steadied, burning tall and clear. This, Kayan said softly, is the disciplined mind. It does not flicker at every passing wind. It does not bend for every impulse. It does not chase the world. Ren exhaled slowly. I want that. I want peace. Kayan looked at him with the calm certainty of a man who has guided many lost souls. Peace is earned, strength is chosen, discipline is forged. The lamp flame reflected in Kayan's eyes as he spoke the words that would define Ren's journey. You are not broken, you are simply untrained. Ren felt something shift inside him. Small, but real. A spark of hope, buried under years of noise. Kayan stood. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we begin the work of shaping your spirit. Ren lay on the mat, listening to the silence he had always feared. It pressed against him, uncomfortable, yet strangely comforting. For the first time in years, he felt the slightest hint of stillness. Weak, but present. Fragile, but undeniable. The first step toward clarity. And so, Ren walked into his first battle, not against the world, but against his own unruly mind. Chapter 2: The Discipline of Stillness. Part 1. Dawn came softly to the mountain, brushing the sky with pale silver. Ren awoke to the cold bite of morning air, his breath rising in thin clouds. For a moment, he forgot where he was. The stone hut, the mountain's silence, the strange old man with eyes like carved obsidian. Then the memory returned, and so did the weight of why he was here. Kayan stood outside, already awake, already still, already present, like a statue carved from centuries. Ren stepped toward him, rubbing warmth into his hands. You rise with the dawn, Kayan said without turning. Good. The unfocused mind sleeps too long. Ren wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an accusation. Kayan motioned for him to sit on a flat stone facing the valley. The world stretched out below. Rolling mist, dark pines, the distant hum of a river. Ren expected instruction. Instead, Kayan said nothing. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. Ren's legs twitched. His thoughts buzzed. His jaw clenched. The silence felt like pressure on his skin, like something closing in around him. Finally, he blurted out, "What are we doing?" Kayan didn't open his eyes. "We are sitting." "Sitting? For what?" "To see." Ren frowned. "See what?" Kayan inhaled slowly, as though tasting the air for wisdom. "The storm that lives inside you." Ren felt irritation rise in him. This wasn't what he expected. He wanted techniques, systems, practices, something to do. Kayan sensed his agitation. "Modern men," he said, "believe stillness is passive. They think discipline is movement, action, hustle." He opened his eyes at last. "But stillness is the first battlefield, the most difficult one." Ren looked down, ashamed of his impatience. Kayan continued, "When you sit in silence, you encounter the truth of your own mind. And truth is uncomfortable." Ren could feel it, the restless twitch under his skin, the urge to grab his phone, the instinct to escape boredom. His thoughts chased each other like wild dogs. "I can't do this," Ren muttered. "Good," Kayan said. "That means we have begun." Ren blinked. "It feels like failure." Kayan's voice deepened, calm but absolute. "Only the arrogant believe stillness should be easy." A gust of wind rolled through the valley. Pine needles shivered. Ren tried to breathe with intention, but even his breath felt disobedient, sharp, shallow, impatient. Kayan reached down and placed a small pebble on Ren's open palm. "This stone," Kayan said, "has more discipline than you." Ren almost laughed. Kayan didn't. "It rests," Kayan continued. "It does not flee from this moment. It does not search for stimulation. It simply exists, fully." Ren stared at the pebble, feeling foolish. Kayan leaned closer. His words were gentle, but they cut. "You fear silence because silence reveals your truth. And you have been running from that truth for years." Ren swallowed hard. He didn't want to admit it, but the words struck deep. In silence, his fears echoed louder. His failures resurfaced. His doubts grew teeth. Kayan said, "Focus is not the ability to hold attention. It is the ability to remain with what is uncomfortable." Ren closed his eyes again. The discomfort was still there, but this time, instead of resisting, he tried to observe it. The tension in his chest, the buzzing in his skull, the impulse to escape, and beneath all of it, something quieter, something faint, a moment, just a moment of presence. It was fragile, like a flame threatened by wind, but it was real. Kayan noticed. He always noticed. He nodded once. "There, in that single breath, you met yourself." Ren exhaled shakily, a mixture of relief and fear. Kayan stood. "Return tomorrow. Same place, same silence. You will sit until the mind obeys." Ren watched the mist clear slowly from the valley. For the first time, he understood. Stillness wasn't empty. It was a mirror. Chapter 2, Part 2. The next morning, Ren returned to the stone overlooking the valley, with less confidence than he hoped, but more honesty than he'd ever carried. His body remembered the discomfort of yesterday. His mind braced for battle. Kayan was already waiting. "Sit," the old man said. "Silence is the forge." Today, you will burn. Ren obeyed, lowering himself onto the cold stone. The air stung his skin, sharp as needles. Kayan settled beside him, hands folded calmly, as if his spirit had long ago made peace with the weight of stillness. Minutes passed, then more. The silence thickened. Ren's mind rebelled. Thoughts surged like a whirlpool. I should check my phone. I'm wasting time. I need to be productive. I should be working, planning, doing something. His pulse quickened. His jaw clenched. The old familiar panic rose. I can't stay here, Ren said suddenly. Kayan didn't open his eyes. You can. You simply don't want to meet what waits inside you. Ren shook his head. I'm not built for this. Kayan's voice cut through the air with surgical calm. No one is built for stillness. Stillness must be carved. Ren gripped the edges of the stone. But it feels like I'm losing control. That is because, Kayan said, finally turning to him, you have mistaken stimulation for safety. Ren looked at him, confused. Kayan continued, your mind has grown addicted to noise, to motion, to escape, so silence feels like death. He tapped Ren's chest. But it is not death. It is rebirth. The warrior births himself in quiet. Ren lowered his gaze, breathing hard. Kayan stood slowly. Come, walk with me. They descended the narrow mountain path. The air smelled of pine and cold earth. Ren's senses, unburdened by screens and notifications, began to sharpen. He could hear the soft crunch of leaves, the faint hum of distant water, the rhythm of his own steps. Kayan stopped beside a small pool, fed by a trickling stream. The water was so still, it reflected the sky like polished glass. Kayan said, your mind is this pool. Watch. He dropped a single pebble into the center. Ripples exploded outward, shattering the reflection. This, Kayan explained, is your modern life. Constant disturbance, constant reaction. You cannot see deeply because the surface is always broken. The water slowly settled. Then Kayan leaned forward and whispered, almost ceremonially, now, become the still water. Ren inhaled, closed his eyes, listened. At first, the noise of his mind returned, cluttered, restless, loud, but Kayan's presence beside him felt like an anchor, a reminder to return. Return, return. Ren followed his breath. In, out, in. Out. Slowly, something shifted. The thoughts didn't disappear, but they lost their claws. The agitation softened. The panic dissolved into a low hum. His awareness widened, like a lantern illuminating a larger circle of darkness. Minutes passed. For the first time in years, Ren felt his mind rest. Not empty, but steady. Kayan watched him with satisfied stillness. Good, you are learning the first principle of discipline. Ren opened his eyes. What is it? That presence is not achieved. Kayan said, it is remembered. They walked back up the trail in silence. But this silence felt different. No longer an enemy, but a companion. Ren sensed a subtle steadiness rising inside him, like stone replacing sand. As they reached the hut, Kayan spoke one final line. Tomorrow, we deepen the stillness, and you will discover what hides beneath your scattered thoughts. Ren swallowed, unsure whether to feel fear or anticipation. Perhaps both. For in stillness, Ren had touched the surface. Now, he would descend into the darker waters, where fear waits to be named. Chapter 3. The Fear Behind Every Distraction. Part 1. Fear does not always roar. Often it whispers, quiet, hidden, disguised as restlessness. On the third morning, Ren felt a heaviness he didn't have words for. The mountain was calm, but something inside him churned. Kayan stood at the doorway of the hut, watching him with the unreadable gaze of someone who already knows the storm a student is about to enter. Today, Kayan said, we do not sit, we descend. Ren frowned. Descend. Kayan gestured toward a narrow path winding deeper into the mountain forest. Stillness reveals the surface, but beneath the surface lives the true enemy of focus. Ren followed, heart thudding as they entered thicker woods, light dimming, air cooling, silence growing denser, almost physical. Eventually, they reached a small clearing marked by an old wooden gate, half buried in vines. It looked ceremonial, sacred, or perhaps forbidden. Kayan stepped through it. Ren hesitated. Kayan's voice drifted back, quiet but firm. If you wish to master your mind, you must first meet the creature that scatters it. Ren swallowed and entered. Inside the clearing stood a single object, an ancient mirror, tall, cracked, framed with dark wood marked by ash and age. It leaned against a stone pedestal, as if placed there for a ritual older than any living memory. Ren felt his skin prickle. What is this? A mirror, Kayan said, but not the kind that reflects your face. This one reflects what you run from. Ren's breath caught. I don't understand. Kayan circled the mirror, fingers trailing across the cracked surface. Tell me, Ren, when your mind flees a task, what does it flee toward? Ren opened his mouth, but no answer came. Kayan finished the thought for him. It flees toward noise, toward distraction, toward anything that keeps you from seeing your own fear. Ren tightened his jaw. I'm not afraid. Kayan turned sharply, voice suddenly stern. Every man who cannot focus is afraid. Fear is the shadow behind every scattered thought. He stepped closer to Ren. Fear of inadequacy, fear of failure, fear of choosing wrong, fear of being seen, fear of being alone with your truth. Ren's throat tightened. Something inside him recoiled. From the words, from the mirror, from himself. Kayan continued, softer now, but cutting deeper. The mind does not distract itself because it is weak. It distracts itself because it is protecting you. Ren blinked. Protecting me from what? From the parts of you that make you tremble. He placed Ren directly in front of the mirror. Look. Ren stared at the fractured glass. At first, he saw only his reflection. Tired eyes, tense shoulders, a faint tremble in his breath. But the longer he looked, the more the reflection seemed to shift, distort, as if the mirror was revealing something beneath the physical. Images surfaced, memories he hadn't invited. The time he froze during a school presentation. The night he quit a project halfway through because he felt he'd never be good enough. The relationships he allowed to wither because he feared he would disappoint. Moments of shame, avoidance. self-betrayal. Ren stepped back, pulse thundering. I don't want to see this. Kayan's tone sharpened. And that is why you cannot focus. Ren shook his head. This is too much. Kayan held his gaze. Your mind flees because your heart trembles. Until you face what you fear, you will never rule your attention. Ren felt his composure cracking. What do I do? Kayan pointed to the mirror. You stand, you look, you breathe. You allow the storm to rise, and you do not run. Ren's hands shook at his sides. The mirror waited, silent and unforgiving. Kayan whispered, Enter the fear. This is the path. Ren inhaled, trembling. Then he stepped forward. Chapter 3, Part 2. Ren stood before the mirror, breath shallow, palms damp. The air around him felt heavier, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Kayan remained behind him, silent, unmoving. A guardian whose presence offered no comfort, only truth. Look, Kayan said. Ren lifted his eyes. The fractured surface didn't reflect him cleanly. Instead, it showed pieces, fragments of who he had been and who he feared he still was. Each crack seemed to divide his reflection into versions of himself he'd tried to forget. At first, the images came softly. Then they struck with force. He saw himself as a boy, trembling as he tried to read aloud in class, his voice cracking, laughter filling the room. He saw the shame burn into him like a brand. Another fragment shifted. Ren, older now, standing at his desk, paralyzed before a blank screen. His mind filled with ideas. He abandoned the moment they grew difficult. Projects half finished, dreams left untouched because he feared they would expose his inadequacy. Another flash, an argument with someone he cared for. Instead of listening, he shut down, withdrawn behind the fortress of his own insecurity. They walked away. He let them. It was easier than confronting the truth of himself. Ren's chest tightened as the images circled him. Stop, he whispered, but the mirror didn't stop. It revealed the moments he refused to revisit. Days when he numbed himself with distractions. Nights when he scrolled endlessly to avoid thinking. Times when he silenced his own potential because he believed he wasn't worthy of success. Ren stumbled back, breath ragged. I can't do this. Kayan's voice struck like a hammer. You can. You must. It hurts, Ren said, voice cracking. Kayan stepped closer. Good. Pain is the beginning. Pain is the teacher. Pain is the guardian of transformation. Ren shook his head, tears forming. Why do I have to face this? Because, Kayan said, every distraction in your life is a shield. You do not run from tasks. You run from yourself. You do not fear failure. You fear the truth that you have allowed your fear to rule you. Ren closed his eyes tight, trying to shut everything out. Kayan's voice softened. Ren, the warrior is not the man who feels no fear. He is the man who sees fear clearly and walks forward anyway. Something in Ren broke then, not in the sense of fracture, but release. A long-held tension finally snapping. He opened his eyes again, forcing himself to look at the mirror. The images still stung, but he didn't run. The shame did not disappear, but its grip loosened. The fear did not vanish, but it lost its fangs. The old memories remained, but they no longer dictated his breath. Kayan observed him quietly. Good, good, stay with it. Ren breathed deeply, in, out. His pulse slowed, his gaze steadied. The mirror shifted again, this time revealing not a memory, but a possibility. A version of Ren who stood tall, clear-eyed, unbroken by distraction. A man who had walked through fear and come out on the other side. Scarred, perhaps, but sharp as a forged blade. Ren stared at that reflection, barely recognizing it, yet feeling something stir within him. "Who is that?" he whispered. Kayan answered, "The man you could become when the fear no longer commands you." Ren's breath quivered, half hope, half grief. "Is that really possible?" Kayan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Only if you choose it. Focus is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to obey it." Ren nodded slowly, a spark of determination igniting. The wind shifted, the forest exhaled. And for the first time, the mirror reflected Ren's face without shaking. Kayan spoke the final words of the ritual. "You have entered the fear. Now, we cut the ropes it uses to bind you." Ren wiped his eyes, steady now. "What comes next?" Kayan turned toward the path. "Ego," he said, "your greatest opponent. For once, fear is faced. A man must confront the voice that clings to pride, comfort, and illusion. The voice that scatters his spirit most of all." Chapter 4. Cutting the Rope of Ego. Part 1. The next morning arrived with an unexpected warmth. Sunlight filtered through the pines in long golden lines, but Ren felt no ease. Fear had been a shadow he could name. Painful, yes, but honest. Ego. Ego was something different. Something slippery. Something he wasn't sure he even understood. Kayan stood in the clearing, staff in hand, posture straight as a blade planted in the earth. "Today," the old master said, "you meet the most cunning enemy of the mind." Ren approached cautiously. "You said ego, but I don't see myself as arrogant." Kayan's response was sharp. "Only fools believe ego is arrogance. Ego is the voice that whispers comfort, the voice that resists difficulty, the voice that says, 'I will try later.'" Ren's stomach tightened. He recognized that voice. Kayan walked to a massive stone, one Ren had seen before but never questioned. Waist high, rough-edged, immovable. "Lift it," Kayan commanded. Ren blinked. "What?" "That. There's no way I can." Kayan cut him off with a small gesture. "Lift. Not because you will succeed. Lift to learn what stands in your way." Ren crouched, bracing himself. He gripped the stone. Muscles strained, arms trembled. His breath broke into harsh bursts. The stone didn't move, not even an inch. He fell back, panting, embarrassed. Kayan watched without judgment. "What did you feel?" Ren shook his head. "Weakness." "No," Kayan said. "You felt ego." Ren frowned. "How?" Kayan tapped the stone with his staff. "This stone is not heavy. Your ego is." Ren didn't understand. Kayan saw this. The master stepped closer. When you strained, ego whispered, "You cannot." When you failed, ego whispered, "This is pointless." When you felt embarrassment, ego whispered, "You should be better than this." Ren lowered his gaze. Kayan was right. Painfully right. Kayan continued. Ego demands comfort. It rejects the humility required for transformation. It blinds a man to the simple truth that mastery begins with failing without shame. The old master pointed to the ground. Again, Ren hesitated. Why? I already know I can't. Kayan's voice boomed like thunder. And there it is. The rope you tied around your own spirit. Ren exhaled shakily and crouched once more. He gripped the stone, lifted, failed. The stone remained cold and indifferent. Kayan knelt beside him. A warrior does not lift the stone to move the stone. He lifts it to move himself. Ren stared at the ground, sweat dripping, chest burning. I feel stupid. Kayan placed a firm hand on his shoulder. No, this is humility. This is the ground on which discipline is built. Ego refuses to be small. Humility bows so the spirit can rise. Ren felt something inside him shift, a subtle cracking of old resistance. Kayan stood and pointed to a long pile of logs near the hut. Your training today is simple. Carry these logs from one end of the clearing to the other. Ren nodded, relieved. I can do that. Kayan stepped in front of him, one at a time. Ren blinked. One. That will take forever. Kayan's eyes narrowed. Ego chases speed. Mastery honors repetition. Ren's shoulders fell. This feels pointless. Kayan smiled faintly. Exactly. So Ren lifted a single log, carried it, set it down, walked back, lifted another. Each trip felt repetitive, slow, maddening. His mind screamed for efficiency, shortcuts, progress. But the old master watched every movement, ensuring Ren carried only one at a time. After the 50th trip, Ren dropped to the ground, exhausted. Kayan approached and placed a cup of cold water beside him. Tell me what you learned. Ren breathed hard. That ego hates the simple things. Kayan nodded. Because simplicity reveals your true nature, and your true nature is not yet disciplined. Ren looked at the logs scattered neatly behind him, the result of persistence, not pride. Kayan leaned in, voice low and firm. To cut the rope of ego, you must first see how tightly you've bound yourself. Only then can the blade of humility do its work. Ren closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. Chapter 4, Part 2. As the sun dipped behind the ridge, the day's final light stretched across the clearing, warm and gold. Ren sat in the dirt, sweat drying on his skin, muscles trembling from hours of carrying logs. Kayan stood nearby, silent, watching him with an expression Ren had learned to interpret. The master was measuring him, not his strength, but his willingness to surrender the self that held him back. Kayan finally spoke. Stand. Ren forced himself to his feet. His legs felt heavy, but his spirit clearer. Kayan led him toward a shallow stream running behind the hut. The water glimmered like polished metal, reflecting the first hints of evening light. Look, Kayan said. Ren leaned over the flowing surface. His reflection rippled, distorted, shifting, fragile. Kayan crouched beside the water. This is your ego as you know it. Ren frowned. A reflection. A reflection that believes it is the true self. Kayan dipped his fingers into the stream, and Ren's distorted face wavered. When conditions change, your ego breaks. It has no roots, no stability, no truth. And yet, you cling to it. Ren let out a slow breath. So, how do I let go of it? Kayan stood, brushing water from his hands. You do not let go. You grow beyond it. He signaled for Ren to follow him deeper into the woods. They moved in silence until they reached an open forest floor where tall bamboo stalks swayed gently in the wind. Kayan tapped a stalk with his staff. The bamboo is strong because it bends. It knows when to yield. Ego does not bend. Ego breaks. Ren listened, the metaphor sinking deep. Kayan began walking between the bamboo, speaking with quiet intensity. To master the mind, a man must become like this, flexible, humble, rooted in truth. Ego resists difficulty, so you must seek it. Ego demands recognition, so you must enter tasks that offer none. Ego clings to being right, so you must learn to be corrected without breaking. Ren remembered how embarrassed he felt earlier, failing to lift the stone. How irritated he became, carrying one log at a time. Each reaction had come from the same place, ego's refusal to be small. Kayan stopped walking and turned to him. There is a practice the ancient warriors used to break ego. Ren straightened. What is it? Humiliation. Ren froze. Humiliation? Kayan nodded. Not the cruel kind, the chosen kind, the kind that teaches the spirit to remain unmoved when pride shouts for escape. He handed Ren a wooden bucket. The bucket was cracked, and water leaked steadily from its seams. Fill this at the stream, Kayan said. Carry it here. You will spill most of it. That is the point. Ren stared at the leaking bucket, but it won't hold water. Kayan's gaze sharpened. Neither does your ego. Ren walked to the stream, filling the bucket. Water poured out in little trails. He carried it back, watching the water diminish with each step. By the time he arrived at the clearing, only a thin pool remained at the bottom. Kayan nodded. Again. Ren repeated the task, and again and again. Every trip felt useless, frustrating, absurd. His arms burned, his legs ached, and his pride screamed, "This is pointless. I should be doing something meaningful, something real, something productive." But Kayan's voice echoed, "Ego hates the simple things." On the 8th or 9th trip, Ren's frustration broke, not outwardly, but inwardly. He exhaled deeply, letting the irritation drain from him like the water from the bucket. He walked slower, calmer, not fighting the task, simply doing it. Kayan watched the shift in Ren's posture, the softening, the acceptance, the quiet resolve. Good, Kayan murmured. Now you work without ego. Ren set the leaking bucket down, water dripping softly into the earth. Kayan stepped in front of him, eyes deep as mountain wells. Humility, he said, is the blade that cuts the rope of ego. And now that you have felt its edge, we can sharpen you further. Ren stood taller, exhausted yet strangely free. What comes after ego? He asked. Kayan smiled faintly. The most demanding discipline of all, devotion to one single path. For only when a man is freed from ego can he give himself fully to the one thing that forges true mastery. Chapter 5. The Warrior of One Thing. Part 1. Morning returned to the mountain, carrying a new kind of silence. Not the heavy silence of fear, nor the reflective silence of stillness, but the sharpened quiet that precedes a revelation. Ren felt it the moment he woke, a subtle shift in his chest, like a compass finally turning toward true north. Kayan waited outside the hut, sitting on a smooth stone, as though he had been carved into place by centuries of discipline. His presence alone demanded focus. Today, Kayan said, we begin the most difficult discipline, the discipline that breaks most men. Ren stepped closer. What is it? Kayan's reply was soft, but carried the weight of a lifetime. Devotion to one path. Ren frowned. I don't understand. I've always been told to multitask, to be flexible, to adapt. Kayan rose slowly, the morning sun catching the edges of his robe. Multitasking, he said, is the art of doing many things. Poorly, presence is the art of doing one thing. Beautifully. He motioned for Ren to follow. They walked to a small training ground Kayan had prepared. A wooden table, a stone cutting block, a stack of blank pages, a calligraphy brush, a bucket of water, and a single wooden practice sword. Ren looked around. What is all this? Tools, Kayan said. Not for tasks, but for shaping the mind. Kayan lifted the wooden sword first. When a warrior swings a blade, he swings only the blade. Not his doubts, not his plans, not his worries, not his 1,000 half-formed intentions. One strike, one breath, one purpose. He handed the sword to Ren. Show me one strike. Ren took a stance, inhaled, and swung. His form wasn't terrible, but his mind wasn't steady. He thought about the next movement. He thought about Kayan watching. He thought about the mistakes he might make. The blade wavered. Kayan shook his head. You did 5 things at once. Your mind was split. Ren clenched his jaw. I tried. Kayan's voice hardened. And still you swung with a divided spirit. He pointed to the blank pages on the table. Sit. Write. Ren blinked. Write what? One line, Kayan said. Only one. Write it with your whole being. Ren dipped the brush into ink, touched it to the page, and began writing a single character. But halfway through the stroke, his mind drifted to the sword, to the tasks still waiting, to the lessons ahead. His hand hesitated. The brush trembled. The line wavered. Kayan exhaled through his nose. You think ahead. You cling behind. Your spirit divides itself into fragments. Ren set the brush down, frustrated. Why is this so hard? Kayan stepped close, voice firm but compassionate. Because you have lived your whole life, scattered, running from task to task, thought to thought, desire to desire. You are a river split into 100 channels. You have never once flowed in one direction. The words struck deep. Kayan continued, when a man commits to one thing fully, even something simple, he experiences a power the unfocused will never know. He placed the wooden sword back into Ren's hands. This time, when you strike, do not think of striking. become the strike. Ren inhaled, centered himself, let the world narrow to one breath. He swung. The air split in a clean, decisive line. No tremor, no doubt, no division. Kayan nodded slowly. Better. Not perfect, but better. Ren felt something flicker inside him. A small flame of what presence might feel like if he lived this way always. Kayan gestured to the table again. We will do this with every tool, every task, every breath, until you understand the ancient truth. What you do not give your whole spirit to will never give anything back. Ren swallowed. And if I fail? Kayan smiled faintly. Then you try again. The path does not accept the half-hearted. Ren picked up the brush once more, and this time he breathed as if there was nothing else in the world. Because for the first time, there wasn't. Chapter 5, Part 2. Kayan stood behind Ren as the brush met paper again. Slow, steady, deliberate. Ink flowed like breath. The stroke completed itself, unbroken. Ren looked down, surprised. The character was simple, yet somehow carried a weight he hadn't felt before. A quiet force, as if his spirit had finally found a single direction to flow. Kayan nodded. Good. Now we deepen it. Ren barely had time to breathe before Kayan replaced the brush with a smooth river stone. Hold this. Ren lifted it, puzzled. What do I do with it? Only hold, Kayan said. Only feel its weight, its temperature, its texture. You will not think of the sword. You will not think of the brush. You will not think of the tasks ahead. Ren held the stone, and for a few seconds his mind obeyed. Then thoughts crept in. Questions, comparisons, memories. Kayan watched his eyes shift. There, you left the stone. Return. Ren inhaled, brought attention back. The roughness, the cool surface, the shape. His thoughts fled again. Kayan's voice cut cleanly through the moment. Your mind has lived so long in many directions. It no longer knows how to stay. Ren lowered the stone, frustrated. Why does everything in me want to drift? Because drifting is easy, Kayan said. Presence is not. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Ren's chest. Inside you is a man who has never chosen one thing with his whole being. Not one task, not one dream, not one breath. Ren swallowed hard. He knew it was true. His life had been a series of fractured starts. He tried music, then quit. Tried studying, then drifted. Tried relationships, then withdrew. Tried goals, then abandoned them the moment discomfort arrived. His past was a trail of half-built bridges. Kayan removed his hand. Now, he said, you will build one. He led Ren to a pile of stones stacked neatly beside the training grounds. You will build a tower, Kayan said, one stone at a time, slowly, precisely, with full presence. If your mind wanders, the stones will fall. Ren stared at the task. It seems simple. Kayan chuckled, the sound dry and knowing. If it was simple, your entire life would look different. Ren knelt and began stacking the stones. The first two were easy. The third required attention. By the fourth, his thoughts drifted, and the tower collapsed. Kayan said nothing. Ren rebuilt it. Collapsed again. A third time. A fourth. By the fifth collapse, anger prickled at him. "Why can't I do this?" Kayan replied without looking at him. "Because you are still dividing your attention." Ren gritted his teeth. "I'm trying." Kayan turned sharply. "And that is your mistake. Trying is the language of effort. Presence is the language of devotion." Ren froze. Kayan stepped closer. "When a man is devoted, he does not try. He becomes." Ren inhaled deeply, letting the frustration burn off like morning mist. He picked up the stones again, one at a time, breath by breath, thought by thought. He felt the tower's weight, felt the tremble of each placement, felt his mind wanting to drift, and gently brought it back, again and again. Slowly, the tower grew, small, imperfect, but upright, whole, honest. When the final stone settled without falling, Ren exhaled shakily. For a moment, he felt something expand inside him. A widening of awareness, a settling of the spirit, a moment where time didn't exist. Kayan stepped beside him, eyes soft with approval. "That," he said, "is presence. Complete presence. The warrior of one thing." Ren looked at the stone tower. Simple, quiet, and somehow sacred. Kayan continued, voice almost ceremonial. "When a man gives his full spirit to one act, the world gets out of his way. Time slows. Noise fades. The task welcomes him. This is mastery." Ren felt a warmth in his chest. "I want to live like that. Always." Kayan nodded. "Then carry this discipline with you. For tomorrow, we enter the final teaching." Ren's breath steadied. "What teaching?" he asked. Kayan looked toward the horizon, where the sun dipped behind the distant peaks. "The teaching of identity," he said. "The path you cannot lose once you become it." Transition to Chapter 6. For when a man learns to give his whole being to the moment, he is ready to become someone new, one who does not chase the path, but lives as the path itself. Chapter 6. The Path That Cannot Be Lost. Part 1. The final morning came, draped in a quiet, unlike any Ren had felt before. A silence that did not demand, did not challenge, did not expose. It simply was. A silence that welcomed. Ren stepped outside the hut and found Kayan standing at the edge of the ridge, hands folded behind his back, watching the valley below as though observing centuries unfold. The master did not turn when Ren approached. He only spoke 2 words. "It is time." Ren felt the weight of the moment settle over him like a cloak. Kayan finally faced him. "You have walked through stillness. You have faced the fear that fractured you. You have cut the rope of ego. You have learned to give your full spirit to one thing." Ren nodded. Kayan's eyes were deep, calm, almost sorrowful. "But now, we enter the teaching that decides whether these lessons fade or become the marrow of who you are." Ren straightened. "I'm ready." Kayan gestured for him to follow. They descended a narrow trail carved into the mountainside. The air grew colder, the forest thicker. Ren's senses were sharper now. He felt the flex of each muscle, heard the whisper of each pine needle. tasted the metallic crispness of dawn. Eventually, they reached a secluded flat stone, circular, weathered, almost ceremonial. Kayan stepped onto it. "This," he said, "is where warriors of the old path discovered who they truly were." Ren looked around. "What happens here?" Kayan tapped the center of his chest. "This is where the warrior stops practicing focus and becomes focus." Ren felt a strange tremor inside him, something between anticipation and fear. Kayan continued, "Your entire life, you have tried to stay focused, tried to control your mind, tried to fight distractions. But trying is the language of someone who still believes attention is separate from identity." He stepped closer, voice low and steady. "You do not lose focus because you lack discipline. You lose focus because you are still living as the man you used to be." Ren felt the truth land with quiet force. Kayan raised his staff and drew a single line in the dirt before Ren's feet. "Step over this line only when you understand what it means." Ren stared at the line. "What does it mean?" Kayan's voice dropped, almost a whisper, yet sharp enough to cut stone. "It means you're no longer a man who tries to be disciplined. You are a man who is disciplined, not by effort, but by identity." Ren's chest tightened. Kayan continued, "When you return to the world, distractions will not disappear. Life will not soften. Chaos will not bow for you. You must become a man who walks through the noise, untouched. A man who does not need silence to be calm. A man who does not need motivation to act. A man whose presence is unwavering because it comes from within." Ren felt every word carve itself into him. Kayan pointed again to the line. "Cross this only if you choose to become such a man." Ren looked down. The line was small, just a mark in the dirt, yet it felt like a boundary between the life he had lived and the life he was meant to claim. He thought of his old habits, the noise, the chaos, the scattered mind. He thought of the stone tower, the mirror, the stillness, the fear he had survived. He thought of the warrior reflected in the fractured glass, the man he could become. Ren inhaled, slow, steady, present. Then he stepped over the line. Kayan closed his eyes for a moment, as though honoring a sacred vow that had just been made. When he opened them, his voice carried a new tone, not teacher to student, but master to warrior. "Good," Kayan said softly. "Now, we forge the identity that cannot be lost." Chapter 6, Part 2. Ren stood on the far side of the line, not different in body, but unmistakably altered in spirit. Kayan faced him with the quiet gravity of a man who had seen countless initiations, yet treated each as sacred. "Now," the master said, "you will learn the final truth." Kayan pressed the end of his staff into Ren's chest, not forcefully, but with precise intention. "This place," he said, "is where most men lose themselves, not in battle, not in hardship, in identity." He stepped back, drawing a circle around Ren with the staff, slow, deliberate, ceremonial. "You have been living as a fractured man," Kayan continued. "One moment disciplined, the next distracted. One moment warrior, the next child. One moment present, the next scattered." Ren swallowed, remembering all the times he had failed himself. Kayan pointed at the circle. This is the boundary between the man you were and the man you must become. Ren looked down at the circle, feeling the weight of every lesson on this mountain settle into his bones. Kayan continued, his voice deepening. A warrior does not return to the world and hope to stay focused. He carries focus as his nature, as instinct, as breath, as the very language of his spirit. He placed a hand on Ren's shoulder. You must become the man who does not lose himself, even when the world pulls at him from every angle. Ren nodded, though his heart thudded with doubt. How do I do that? Kayan smiled gently, the kind of smile a master gives when the student is ready for the truth he once feared. By understanding the final principle, he lifted his staff and traced 3 symbols into the dirt: stillness, courage, devotion. These, Kayan said, are no longer practices for you. They are who you are. Ren knelt to study the symbols, feeling something powerful stir inside him. Kayan continued, stillness is not what you do. It is how you move through chaos. Courage is not a moment of bravery. It is the foundation of your choices. Devotion is not discipline. It is the shape of your very being. Then he added a 4th symbol, one Ren had never seen before: presence. Ren looked up. What is that? Kayan's eyes glowed with the fire of ancient understanding. Presence, he said, is the state in which a man is so anchored in who he is that nothing can pull him away. Ren felt those words strike deeper than any lesson before. Kayan handed him the wooden sword. Show me. Ren gripped the sword, inhaled once, exhaled once, and without thinking, without trying, he stepped into a stance that felt effortless, natural, inevitable. Kayan nodded slowly. Good. You are no longer performing the stance. You are the stance. Ren felt the truth of it. For the first time, his mind was not split, not drifting, not doubting. It was quiet, sharp, unified. Kayan circled him, studying every breath. Then he spoke the final teaching. A man does not rise to the level of his goals. He falls to the strength of his identity. Ren felt a shiver move through him. Not fear, but clarity. Kayan lowered his staff. You have a final task, he said. Return to the world, walk into noise, into temptation, into modern chaos, and remain yourself. Ren hesitated. What if I fail? Kayan smiled, not gentle, but proud. You will not fail, he said, because you are no longer the man who fails. Ren turned toward the path leading down the mountain. He breathed in the silence one last time, but this time, the silence felt like it lived inside him. Kayan spoke the final words of Ren's journey. You came to this mountain as a scattered mind seeking control. You leave it as a warrior whose presence commands the moment. Ren bowed deeply. Then he stepped forward, not down a mountain, but into the life of the man he had become. Core moral. Focus is not the sharpening of the mind, but the shaping of the spirit. If this story awakens something in you, a spark of discipline, a hunger for presence, a reminder of the warrior you were meant to become, then do not let it fade. Subscribe, not for me, for you, for the man who refuses to live distracted, for the spirit sharpening itself day by day, for the path you now walk, the path that cannot be lost once chosen. Join this tribe of disciplined minds. Join this brotherhood of warriors reclaiming their focus. Subscribe and continue the journey. Your next transformation begins with the next video. Don't miss it. Step forward. Claim it.